The United States and Iran, two nations locked in a decades-long standoff. From nuclear threats to proxy wars, economic sanctions to cyber warfare. What really lies behind the U.S. opposition to Iran? What makes this conflict so persistent? And what are the core issues fueling this distrust? Today, we dive deep into 10 powerful reasons why the USA does not support Iran, and some of them may surprise you. It all started in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. Before that, Iran was ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a monarch supported by the US government and seen as a modernizing force. But his rule was deeply unpopular with many Iranians due to political repression, corruption, and his perceived alignment with Western powers. In February 1979, a popular uprising forced the Shah into exile, and the country underwent a radical transformation. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini emerged as the leader of the Islamic Revolution, establishing a theocratic regime that rejected Western influence. The culmination of this shift was the seizure of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in November 1979, where 52 American diplomats and citizens were taken hostage and held for 444 days. This crisis not only shocked the American public, but also ignited a diplomatic Cold War between the two nations that has never truly ended. Iran's new government adopted a radically anti-American posture. Chants of "Death to America" became a political slogan. State-sponsored media portrayed the U.S. as the Great Satan, an imperialist power working to subjugate Muslim nations. For the U.S., this wasn't just rhetoric. It was a direct challenge to its global influence and moral standing. The memory of the embassy hostage crisis continues to define how American politicians and the public perceive Iran. But the story gets even more complicated. In the 1980s, Iran became embroiled in a brutal war with Iraq. Ironically, during this time, the U.S. quietly supported Saddam Hussein's Iraq with intelligence and arms, despite its known use of chemical weapons. This U.S. support was seen by Iran as a betrayal and solidified their distrust of American foreign policy. Adding fuel to the fire, the Iran-Contra affair revealed that the U.S. had secretly sold weapons to Iran while publicly supporting Iraq, in exchange for help securing the release of American hostages in Lebanon. The double-dealing deeply offended both Iranians and Americans and added more confusion to an already tangled relationship. Fast forward to the 21st century, and Iran's nuclear ambitions become a centerpiece of global concern. Iran claims its nuclear program is for peaceful energy development, but Western intelligence agencies have long suspected that the country is pursuing nuclear weapons. This concern led to years of negotiations and eventually the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran Nuclear Deal. Under this agreement, Iran would reduce its nuclear capabilities in exchange for relief from international sanctions. However, in 2018, President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from the deal, citing Iran's continued missile development and regional interference. This move deeply angered Tehran and led to a resurgence of hostile rhetoric. Iran restarted uranium enrichment activities, and tensions once again escalated. One of the most cited reasons for American opposition to Iran is its support for terrorist organizations. The U.S. State Department has designated Iran as a state sponsor of terrorism. It accuses Iran of providing funding, weapons, and training to groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. These groups are responsible for attacks on American allies and, in some cases, directly against American troops. Iran's strategy of using proxy forces to exert influence across the Middle East is viewed by Washington as dangerous and destabilizing. In Syria, Iran supports the Assad regime. In Iraq, it backs Shia militias that sometimes clash with U.S. forces. In Yemen, Iran supports the Houthi rebels against a Saudi-led coalition backed by the U.S. Through these interventions, Iran is perceived not just as a regional power, but as a strategic threat. Another major source of tension lies in Iran's opposition to Israel, one of the U.S.'s closest allies. Iranian leaders have repeatedly called for the elimination of the Israeli state. Tehran's support for Palestinian militant groups has led to multiple confrontations with Israel, further entrenching American opposition. But it's not just bullets and bombs. the digital battlefield has emerged as a critical front in the US-Iran conflict. In 2010, the world discovered Stuxnet, a sophisticated computer virus allegedly developed by the US and Israel, which targeted Iran's nuclear centrifuges. It was the first known cyberweapon to cause real-world damage. Since then, Iran has also launched its own cyber attacks on American infrastructure, banks, and even election systems. Cyber warfare has opened a new, less visible front in this enduring standoff, where attacks can occur without a single shot being fired. Experts warn that cyber attacks could escalate into real-world conflict if critical infrastructure is compromised. On top of all this, Iran's record on human rights continues to be a major point of contention. The regime is known for its suppression of free speech, imprisonment of dissidents, and discrimination against women and minorities. The US frequently highlights these abuses in international forums, using them to justify economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. For many American lawmakers, Iran's domestic policies are morally indefensible. And then there's the question of oil and energy. Iran sits on some of the largest oil and gas reserves in the world. Its strategic location by the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway through which nearly 20% of global oil passes, gives it incredible geopolitical leverage. The US fears that in the event of open conflict, Iran could choke this vital artery of global energy, triggering economic chaos. Some believe the US's stance on Iran isn't just about national security. It's also about control over the global energy supply and maintaining dominance in the Middle East. Iran's ambitions threaten that dominance. But here's where it gets truly controversial. Some critics argue that maintaining Iran as a threat is politically and economically beneficial to some in Washington. The military-industrial complex, defense contractors, and even certain media outlets thrive on conflict. Prolonged tension justifies high defense budgets, arms sales to allies, and political narratives about national security. Peace, they argue, isn't profitable. War, cold or hot, sustains careers, industries, and influence. So we must ask, is the US opposition to Iran driven entirely by principle and security concerns? Or are deeper, more self-serving interests at play? After decades of confrontation, sanctions, covert operations, and failed diplomacy, it's clear the US-Iran relationship is one of the most complex and deeply rooted conflicts in modern geopolitics. From hostage crises to nuclear threats, from cyber attacks to regional proxy wars, this story is far from over. But one thing is certain: the people of both nations deserve peace, prosperity, and mutual respect. The question is whether their governments can rise above the past, or whether history will continue to repeat itself. What do you think? Should the US continue its hardline stance against Iran, or is it time to try something new? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a deep dive into the stories shaping our world. Because when it comes to global power, alliances, and history, nothing is ever as simple as it seems.